Straight
Now tuned in to the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve is yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get to use those personal initiative, which is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us out there to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And we put all this together into one bundle, one package, one mindset, one method, one philosophy, one book, one masterclass, this daily masterclass that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is how school sets us up for failure, all of us. Now, I want to give a disclaimer before we get into this, that this episode is not an indictment of any teachers out there. I think I would even consider myself a teacher. I don't work in a school, but this is not an indictment of teachers. I got a lot of good friends and even family members who are teachers. This is also not an indictment of the American educational system. I already indicted them in a different episode way back a long time ago. I've already done all of that already. So if you want to hear me trash the American educational system, let me tell you the episode where you can go listen to me trash them. That is episode number... Oh, here it is. Episode number 199, the scam that is the American education system. So if you want to hear me, you want to hear that, you can go listen to it at your convenience. This is about, what we're talking about here today is about the schooling that my generation received versus what actually happened in life. So I could even title this episode, What I Learned in School versus What Actually Happened in Life. But it's better to say how school sets us up for failure, or however I end up titling this episode. So any teachers who are listening to this, I'm not making this to bash you. I know some really great teachers. I have a business degree myself, and I got Work on Your Game University. So I'm not going to bash school in general. And another thing I must add is that I graduated from school in 2004. I haven't been in school ever since. So the school system, or the way things are being taught, may be completely different these days than it was back then. And any of you who you've been listening to this show, you just heard me in episodes number 1722 through 1727. I appeared in an entrepreneurship class at a high school at Prairie High, which is out in Illinois. And it is an entrepreneurship class. So they said, let's go find some entrepreneurs to come speak to the class. That is a novel idea because guess what? I have a business degree from Penn fucking State. They never had an entrepreneur come to our class and be a guest speaker. And that was at a college. This is a high school that did it. They went and found somebody to speak to their class. In college, we never had an entrepreneur come speak to us in our class. As a matter of fact, in my business degree, all the credit hours that I had to take to get my business degree from Penn State, Altoona, there was not even an entrepreneurship class. There was no class on entrepreneurship during the 4 years that I was in college in my business degree. That's an absolute fact. And I think that's a little bit different these days, since if they got entrepreneurship classes in high school, I'm sure they got them in college. And again, I only went to one college, so I can't speak on the experience of other colleges. Other colleges may be better at how they set their things up and how they teach stuff and things like that. And it's not necessarily about entrepreneurship. It's just about the way that the school was structured, again, in my day at school versus what ended up happening when I got into quote unquote real life. So any of you who is younger than me, I'm 39. So any of you who is younger than me, or you're in school right now, or you're a teacher and things are a little bit different, I am welcoming the fact that may very well be possible today. So I'm not saying that this is the way it was for me is the way it is for everybody. But at the same time, those of you who are teachers, or you are students, or you are a parent of a student right now, you can listen to what I'm saying here today and note if there are some things that have not changed, because I'm only speaking off of my experience. So if you know I say something and it's still like that today, then understand it was like that back then too. And it hasn't changed. And what I'm generally talking about here just are the principles of the way that things work. Not the principle like the person in charge, but principles within, not principal, A-L at the end, but principle, P-L-E at the end. So anyway, all that being said, let's get into our points. Point number one, the topic once again, is why school sets us up for failure. Number one, the general way that school worked for us. Again, in my generation, it may be different now. I got to keep giving these disclaimers because those of you who are not online content publishers understand that people will take shit that you say out of context just so they can get some content and some likes and views for themselves. Trust me, it happens to everybody. But anyway, when I was in school, information would be presented to us. It would be taught to us by the teachers. We were assigned with retaining that information. And then at some point, we would be tested on our retainment of that information, not retainment, retention of that information. See? So I know I'm not qualified to be talking about school. Our retention of that information. And the test would prove whether or not we were good or not good at retaining the answers. That's how school works. So we go to class, the teacher teaches us some stuff, and then they assign us to go learn some more stuff on our own at home. They call that homework. Then we had to retain it, and then they would give us a test 3 weeks later or 6 weeks later or once a week, whatever. And the test would prove whether we were good at retaining the answers or we were not good at retaining the answers. Simple as that. If you were good at retaining the answers, then you became somebody like my sister, Dre Baldwin, who is nowadays a professor of law at University of California at Los Angeles. You get straight A's, you skip grades, you go to the best high schools in the city, you get scholarships to go to college, you get PhDs and JDs and master's degrees, and she has all of those. I'm not exaggerating, she has all of those. Because you're really good at studying, remembering, retaining, and regurgitating the information that you were taught to retain. Now, my sister and I didn't go to all the same schools, so maybe her experience was maybe a little bit different from mine, but again, we're from the same era, so I think I know what I'm talking about. Now, the answer is somewhere in between. Let's say you're not great at retaining the information and you're not terrible at retaining the information. You become somebody kind of like me, where I was a mediocre student. Mediocre meaning I was like a C-level student, which means I understood enough to retain. I understood and retained enough and was able to regurgitate enough. Let's put it that way, because it might not be that I didn't retain it. Maybe I just wasn't good at regurgitating it, but I was pretty good at doing both. So I did enough work to retain enough information, to regurgitate enough information to get a C in school, general. I was a C student generally by the time that I graduated. So I was in between. And if the answer is no, you're not good at retaining and regurgitating information, you fail classes. All right, you get left behind, you get kicked out of schools, you get put in remedial classes, you got to take a grade all over again, or you get labeled. Again, in my era, we were labeled, these are dumb kids. All right, you was in second grade last year, you were second grade again this year, what's wrong with you? We would laugh at those kids. That doesn't necessarily mean that they were dumb. Maybe they were just bad at retaining information. But I did well enough in school because, again, though I neglected to seriously apply myself, I had the capacity to retain enough information to get by. Now, I graduated as an average student, indeed, as I said, but I know people who are great students. They had the same capacity as me, and they applied it to retaining more information, and they retained it more thoroughly, and they kicked my ass academically. Why? Because I don't know if they understood the game, but they played the game really, really well. The school game, which is get the information, retain it, regurgitate. Get, retain, regurgitate. Get, retain, regurgitate. If you are in school right now, that's all you got to do. Get the information, retain the information, regurgitate the information on the test. That's it. Now, again, depending on who your teacher is, how the school is set up, how classes are set up, it may not be so cut and dry, but that's how it was when I was in school. Now, if it's the same as that for you today, understand that they haven't changed that system at all since I was in school. Now, moving on. Here's the disclaimer, or the not so fast, as we move on to point number 2. Even though these students, again, the topic once again is how school sets us up for failure. Even though these students who got the information, retained it, and regurgitated it at a higher level than Dre did, thusly they kicked my ass academically. They had way better grades than me. Maybe they got accepted to way better colleges than me. Maybe they got scholarships that I didn't get. They graduated at the top of their class where I don't even know where I was in my class. I know I wasn't at the top, because if I was, they would have told me. They didn't tell me shit, so I know I wasn't at the top. However, point number 2, here's how real life works, quote unquote real life. I talked about this in episode number 1518. The topic of episode 1518 is that life is an open book test. What does that mean? Well, we think about it. Now, I don't know how things work in school these days, but when I was in school, if we had a test, the last thing you could do is have one of your books open. You couldn't have your notebook open because that would have answers to the test if you are good at taking notes. You couldn't have your textbook open because that had the answers to the test. We didn't have phones or laptops or anything like that, so I don't know what the rule is with phones and laptops with students these days, but I'm going to assume that you got to put your phone away. You can't have AirPods in your ears or none of that stuff, because any of that stuff could be used to give you the information that you need to pass the test. So you have to close all your books. All your access to information is closed off, and you must prove that you retained the information just in your head, no other way. That's how it is in school. But let me tell you how it's completely different in life. I mean, think about it yourself. I don't have to tell you. The last time you had a challenge in life, last time you needed to get some information in life, last time there was something you needed to deal with or handle and you didn't have the information in your head, what did you do? You either went to another person who you knew who might be able to help you and supply the information, or you went to the internet where you could crowdsource information from the whole damn world and see what they had to say, see what the internet had to say. In other words, life is an open book test. School is a closed book test. School says you must remember everything and prove that you remembered it by passing this test. Life says you don't have to remember a damn thing. All you have to do is know which questions to ask, which we just talked about 3 days ago. Know which questions to ask, and we'll give you all the information that you need. This is the fundamental difference between what happens in school and what happens in life. In school, you must remember it. In life, all you gotta do is access it. You don't need to retain anything in life. Honestly, you don't. I mean, now it can be, you can get to things a little bit faster if you can retain information, but you don't have to remember it. I mean, I know people who have podcasts that they write down every single word that they're going to say, and then they just read the transcript for their podcast episode. Now, somebody like me, I retain a good amount of the information that I talk about. My mind is more encyclopedic in that I have notes, I have points that I want to make, but then I say my point and then I just start talking to you off the top of the things that I want to say. But I have a lot of experience in doing this, so I've gotten really good at doing it. Hey, magic formula. Maybe that's why I wasn't so good at school. So here's the point. You don't have to retain anything in life. The book is wide open. You can access it anytime. Google is the biggest book in the world. Any information you need, any word that you want to define, any person you want to know who the hell they are, if they really did the things that they say that they did, those pictures that you were looking for, that person that you played against in college and you want to know what happened to them ever since, that school that you never heard of, but now somebody mentioned it, now you want to look them up, see where they're at and what their school is all about. Anything that you want to know, Google is the biggest encyclopedia in the world. YouTube is a library, a television library or a video library of everything in the world. Other people, any person you meet or hear of, you can look them up and see, are they really the person that somebody said they are? All the answers are available to you and literally at your fingertips. While school rewards people who have the answers, what does life reward? It rewards people who have the questions. Now, how is that? Dre, what do you mean life rewards people with the questions? Because here's the thing. Even though Google is this big encyclopedia that gives you all the answers, here's the challenge with Google, is that if you don't know what to ask Google, you still won't get the right information. So the next time that you have a challenge, really think about that. If you didn't know what to ask for, you wouldn't be able to find the answer. I'll give you a scenario, something that happened. There was a time where I had a Chevy Trailblazer, right? And I remember this girl I knew called me one day on a whim. It was like a Sunday afternoon. And she was like, yo, I'm like stranded. I need to get a ride to the airport because I got, a flight that I need to catch. And the person who was going to drive me, they can't take me. Dre, can you please take me to the airport? So I said, all right, I'll take you to the airport. So I drove this chick we were in Miami, like downtown Miami. I drove her to the Fort Lauderdale airport. And when I remember I put my car in park to let her out of the car at the airport. She gets out the car, goes inside the airport. Then I go to put my car in drive and the car would not move. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? The car wouldn't move. So I had AAA. I called AAA. They sent somebody out. I'm sitting there in the airport, like the terminal. And I can't drive. My car won't move. The engine is running and everything. And I can hear it revving when I press the gas, but it won't move. So this guy comes out and he looks. He gets underneath the car. And he's looking at it. He's saying, oh, what happened is there's this little piece that it broke off and you're not able to, you can't shift the car from park to drive anymore because that's the thing. Whenever you shift from park to reverse to drive to neutral, there's a little piece that moves those pieces around and that piece broke. It's a little tiny piece, right? And he wasn't able to really explain it to me that well, but he said that to me and he said, what I did, sir, was I took some string and he tied the pieces together so that I could at least put the car in the drive. He said, listen, every time you shift gears, it's not going to work. What you're going to need to do is get under the car and shift it yourself. Otherwise, the car is not going to operate. You need to replace that piece. And I said, all right, well, thank you. So he got the car in drive. I was able to drive the car back home. When I got home, I had to kind of get under the car to put it into park. So I had to put my emergency brake on so the car wouldn't run me over. And this is the way I operated the vehicle for about a week. Then here's what happened. That string ended up breaking And I couldn't do that anymore, so I had to put new string on there, but I'm like, I can't keep doing this forever. I needed to figure out what is that piece that goes there. So I'm calling auto body shops. I'm trying to go to the auto body store. I'm trying to describe what's happening. I took pictures of it. I remember I sent pictures to my dad because I'm not the type of person to go get under a car and work on a car and have grease all on me and all that shit. I'm too pretty for that. But my dad does that type of stuff, or at least he used to. I sent him pictures of the situation, asked him what it was. He couldn't figure it out. He was showing the pictures of people at work. They couldn't figure it out. And these are people who work with their hands. They couldn't figure it out. And I'm just trying to figure it out. I could not figure out what the hell this piece was. Finally, I figured out what the piece was. And the guy had told me the name of it. It was called a grommet. A grommet. Grommet. I never heard of this. I'm looking around for a grommet. My dad didn't know what it was. The guy from AAA didn't know what it was. I couldn't find it anywhere. I'm calling it Chevy dealership. I don't even think they had good information on it. I finally found this grommet on eBay. I found a grommet on eBay, and guess how much this thing cost? This grommet. The grommet cost $1.60. Yes, not $160. $1.60, and it's this little piece of plastic. It looks like, when you buy some earbuds, and it's like the little tips that you can remove, like the removable tips that you put on your earbuds that are different sizes based on the size of your ears so that they stay in your ears when you're working out or walking or something. That's the size of the grommet. That's how big it was. And I bought a little pack. It was like 3 of them in there for $1.64. I bought it from some person in Texas, and I had to wait like 3 days for it to come in the mail. Now I finally got it. We got it from the post. I walked to the post office. My damn car wasn't working. Went and put the shit on my car, installed it myself, and the car worked perfectly from that point forward. Now I had a Trailblazer anymore, so hopefully that thing still works. Now, why am I telling you this whole story? Because of this. Until I figured out what the hell that piece was and how the hell to find it, despite the fact that I had access to all the information in the world. I could have went into an AutoZone. Y'all been to an AutoZone before, or any of those car parts shops? All right, that store is big as hell. They got everything you could possibly need in a car. I didn't know what to ask for. I didn't know what the piece was. I didn't know what to look for. So despite the fact that I had access to all the information, without asking the right question, I never would have solved my problem. So this is how life works. See, life is not about you got to know all the answers. Life is about you got to know what question to ask. If you don't have the right question, you'll never figure things out. And this is why I did a whole episode on that a couple days ago. See, the best questions are the insights. Like I talked about in episode 1177. The best insights are the things that take you outside of the box. Again, listen to episode 1177. You'll learn more about what I mean there. Let's move on to point number 3. The topic once again today is how school sets us up for failure. Number 3, our teachers and our parents. Again, in my era, they dictated to us. Now, hopefully your teachers and parents don't dictate to you as much as ours did in my era. Because our teachers and parents will say things like, well, this is what it is, this is why it is, and that's it. Now, don't ask me any questions. Don't ask me any follow-ups. Don't ask me any more whys. I just told you why, and it's done. Don't say nothing else. We were not challenged. Again, I'm just speaking from my personal experience. We were not challenged to acquire our own information. We were not challenged to acquire our own opinions. We were told what the information was, and we were told that in order to pass the class, we needed to internalize that information to move up to the next level. And I'm finding a little bit of this is coming back these days when I did my episode about why you need to stop watching the news, which is episode number 1474. I told you to stop watching the news because the news used to just provide you objective information, allow you to form your own opinions. Nowadays, the news tells you what your opinion should be. They don't even tell you objective information. They tell you the opinion as if it's objective. And then people who are non-thinking individuals, and there seem to be a lot of them, you'd be surprised, they just accept that as the actual objective information when it absolutely is not. But again, listen to episode 1474 to understand that. So we were just given information, and this is what it is, and you need to retain this and prove that you know it, quote unquote, know it in order to move up. Now, luckily for me, and luckily for you, I was introduced to reading at a young age by those same parents who dictated to us. I was introduced to reading, and the great thing about reading is that no one can tell you what you can take from something that you read. So you can read as much as you want, and you can draw your own conclusions based on what you read. And when you read writing of people who will challenge you to think, and most writing will challenge you to think, at least if you're reading anything of substance, it will give you new ways of looking at the world. It'll give you new ways of looking at life that you otherwise may have never been exposed to, given the environment that you're in and the people who you're around. They may not be serious thinking individuals, but if you read books, you can communicate with anybody. You can communicate with you can engage with any type of idea if you open yourself to reading. So this is the value of reading for me. So being introduced to reading expanded my mind outside of the classroom. So while I did understand and played the game to pass through school and graduate, at the same time, I knew there were other ways of thinking that were far outside of what the classroom was teaching me and far outside of the scope of what my teachers and even parents were capable of explaining to me, because they had never been exposed to that information, but the books allowed me to expose myself to it. So that's why reading matters so much, because someone takes a certain amount of their own experience, they condense that down into 100 pages or 200 pages, and you can consume that in 3 weeks. It took them 5 years to gain the experience to write that book, and you got it in 3 weeks. That's a great investment. That's why it matters so much to learn from people who are thinking individuals who take what they have found and they condense it into, relatively speaking, bite-sized doses that you can take in and learn from in a much shorter period of time than it took them to learn it in the first place, like this show right here. Moving on to point number 4. Today's topic, once again, is how school sets us up for failure. Number 4, for the students and the teachers and the parents who are listening to me right now, here's my call to action to you. First, the question: how much are the teachers in your life challenging the students to come up with their own opinions and conclusions? This is my first question to the parents and the teachers out there. How much are you challenging the kids to come up with their own conclusions, to come up with their own information, to come up with and formulate their own opinions? The students who are listening to me right now, how much are the adults in your life challenging you to do these things? Hopefully the answers are the same. Hopefully the things that the teachers say is the same that the students are saying. Hopefully we don't get two different stories here. Students out there, are your teachers challenging you to come up with your own opinions, to ask your own questions, to get your own information and not just be forced to accept their information? Because listen, your parents and teachers are human just like you are. I'm not saying that doesn't mean that they're smart. No, they probably are smarter than you. They got more experience than you have, so they know things that you don't know because you haven't done them. But that doesn't mean that their opinion is the only opinion. It doesn't mean that their opinion is the quote unquote right opinion. Are you being challenged to come up with your own opinion, or are you being dictated what your opinion should be? I really would like to know that. I'm interested to find that out. How much are independent ideas tolerated? Definition of an independent idea is an idea that is different from the idea of the person in the front of the room. Can someone have an idea different from the opinion of the teacher, or an opinion different from the opinion of the teacher, and it be accepted by the teacher? Can you have an opinion or idea different from that of your parents and have it be accepted, and your parents encourage you to come up with your own ideas and thoughts and beliefs? Is that tolerated? Is it encouraged? Do people challenge you to come up with your own thinking? These questions will be a major litmus test for how much things have or have not changed when it comes to educating the youth, inside and outside of the classroom. Here on this show, I give you things that I see and I explain them, why I see them this way, but also oftentimes I give you a disclaimer. I tell you, listen, I'm just telling you one way of looking at it. I'm telling you the way that I see it, and I explain to you why I see it the way that I see it. I'm not telling you that you have to accept it. I'm not telling you that this is the only way. I'm not telling you that I'm right. I'm not telling you that I am morally superior. I'm not telling you that I'm on the right side of history, barf. I'm not telling you any of those things. All right? I'm just telling you this is the way that I see things, and then I'll explain it to you, and then you formulate your own opinion. Your opinion does not have to mirror my opinion. And you can like my stuff and still disagree with me. All right, that's what you get here that you're not going to get in too many places. Exceptions to what I just talked about will be hard knowledge areas, things like math and law. Like the law is the law. It's written on paper, and the law has to be followed. And if somebody breaks it, we can judge whether they broke it or not. We can argue it. We can go to court, and we can figure that out. Math is hard. It's like, all right, 2 + 2 does equal 4. All right, there's no opinion that you could come up with that 2 + 2 = 7. All right, that's just what it is. So in hard knowledge areas, that's what it is. Even in things like science, we're always coming up with new things and challenging stuff. I mean, you look at the pandemic that has taken over the world over the last year. People say, well, we believe in science. Well, the thing is, the scientists don't even agree. So what science are you believing in? We can't even agree on that. So I can't even put science into that category. But I would also the thing is, you want to look at who are the people in your life who are challenging you and encouraging you to come up with your own opinions, your own ideas, your own beliefs, and also encouraging you to challenge those opinions and beliefs. Just because you have an opinion or belief that's different from everybody else doesn't necessarily mean that you are some holy being. Maybe you came up with an opinion or belief that is some bullshit, and when it gets challenged, you would realize that. So not only should they be challenging you to come up with your own opinions, but also challenging you to come up with a challenge to your own beliefs and opinions once you do come up with them. All right, your opinions should always be flexible. All right, your opinions should not stay the same through the the completion of your life. The word is escaping me here, but the whole point is, as I talked about in episode number 1555, how to respect other people's opinions. I told you in episode 1407 that subjective opinions matter more than facts now. Episode 1305 that all opinions are not created equally. In episode number 971, the 95% rule in dealing with public opinion. In episode 734, this is an important one, keeping all your opinions flexible. Do not think that just because you have an opinion today that you have to keep that opinion tomorrow. When you get new information and new experiences, the way you think should change. If you're getting new information and new experiences but keep thinking the same way, then we call that stupid. Because you know better, but you're not doing better. You know different, but you're not doing different. That makes no sense. Now, if you went to school, you probably shouldn't be making that mistake if school is doing what it claims to do. All that being said, let's recap today's class, which is why school sets us up for failure. And this is not an indictment of school teachers. This is not an indictment of the American educational system. I've already done that in other episodes of this show. But anyway, point number one, the general way to school worked for us in my generation, and it may very well be different now. So the info was presented to us. We had to receive the information, retain it, and then regurgitate it. And if you did well at that, you got good grades. You did poorly at that, you got bad grades. I was somewhere in between. And students who did much better than me, worked much harder than me at retaining and regurgitating, they kicked my ass academically. However, point number two, in real life is completely different. It's an open book test. In school, the book is closed, so you have to retain and regurgitate information. In real life, the book is open. You don't have to retain shit. All you have to do is know what question to ask. Problem is, many people ask the wrong questions, thusly they can't solve their own problems, even though all the information is available to them. Any of you ever had that problem? This is why you go find yourself a coach. You go find yourself a mentor. You go find someone who can help you see what you cannot see. And the more time you waste not doing this, the longer it's going to take you to solve your own problems. Episode 1177 on Insight will help you with this. And number three, our teachers and parents dictated to us. This is what it is. This is why it is. And that was it. We were not challenged to acquire our own information or to formulate our own opinions. We were told what the information was and also told that to pass the class, we better internalize that information. Luckily for me and you today, I was introduced to something called reading at a very young age, and thus it expanded my mind because I was able to learn from people without actually having to meet them. You can still do that today. Nowadays, in addition to books, we got YouTubing and TikToking and podcasting and clubhousing and every other thing that's going on out here. You can learn from anybody that you want to learn from because thinking individuals, usually they go and share their thoughts with the world because they want other people to know about them. And point number four, my call to action for all the students, teachers, and parents out there. Students, let me ask you a question. How much are your teachers challenging you to come up with your own opinions and conclusions as opposed to dictating to you their opinions and conclusions and telling you that you have to accept them? Parents and teachers, how much are you doing this for your youth? Are you letting them come up with their own opinions? Are you challenging them to do so and then challenging their opinions once they come up with them and challenging them to keep their opinions and thoughts flexible? Is a rarity that I come across anybody who's doing that these days. So anyone who is doing that, I want to know about it. And as you're listening to this episode, if this episode is resonating with you, if I made some good points that really hit home with you, if there was one that really stuck with you, or you have a question about anything that I said here today, or anything that you want to add, or anything you want to challenge me on even, and I'm open to this, not in a way that I'm going to be mad at you for challenging me. I want you to challenge anything that I share here on the show. If you have some information that I don't have or a perspective that I don't have, I'm willing to engage. I want to hear about it. Send me a text message. The number is 305-384-6894. Again, that's 305-384-6894. Text me anything in this episode that has touched you or a previous episode or future episodes. 305-384-6894. Work on your game. Dre, all